Good evening, everyone. I think we'll get the meeting started. I'm Mark Hastings. I'm co-chair of the Rogers Lake Authority. We're going to run our schedule a little bit different. We're going to have a presentation first, and then go into our regular meeting. You're welcome to stay for the regular meeting, and you won't be offended if you decide to leave after the presentation. I would like to notice that there's a tripping hazard of the cord running back there, so please be mindful of that. And I'd like to introduce our speaker, Dave Post, professor of ecology and evolutionary biology at Yale University, recently back from Singapore. And Dave Post and has been working on the LY project here for quite a few decades. So without further ado, I'll give it to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to come on and talk to you all. Can we take a last time on the phone? Okay, so a few of you will see some similar slides. I'm going to give you some updates. Okay, so I'll get you there eventually. So hang with me there, you will back up everyone else. I've been working in Rogers Lake since 2004. Is one of 6 lakes in Connecticut that I sample my key samples regularly. We sample these lakes roughly from the end of March, early April, depending on the year, through to September, October. And Andrew, who's in the back, is my lab manager. You've probably seen him around sampling. And yeah, he returned from Singapore, so Andrew had everything running when I was gone. I got that. Okay, so we're going to talk about alewife. And alewife are, of course, one of 2 species in river herring. That's the river herring group. There's blueback herring and alewife. And the alewife that I'm going to talk about today, but from a management point of view, we typically talk about river herring. It's really hard to tell this species apart. Okay? But in this area, we're talking about alewife. And alewife are migratory, right? They're anadromous, they're sea run. They spend the first few months of their life in lakes. They migrate to the ocean where they grow to about that big. Okay. And then they return to spawn. And they spawn repeatedly. So they can spawn repeatedly. They don't much anymore. But historically, they would start spawning at 3 or 4 years of age. And it was not uncommon to find 10-year-olds spawning in Connecticut. Now they start spawning at 2 or 3. And it's quite unusual to see them much past 4 or 5 years. So yeah, they spawn in lakes, they run through small rivers, and they spend their life in the ocean. And that's the ancestral form. That's what alewife have done through their history, right? They tend to specialize on small rivers. Blueback herring and shad is another place that go up big rivers typically. Alewife work in small ponds, small lakes, and small rivers more often. They range from Nova Scotia down to the Carolinas. This is their native range. But they're very well known both locally because of their historical importance and because they invaded the Great Lakes, okay? So locally, anadromous alewife are important because they were an important source of protein for Native Americans. They were used as fertilizer by early colonial Americans. Indeed, there are newspaper clippings from this region talking about alewife being used as fertilizer in farms. There's been commercial fisheries through time, so they're important for human consumption in early colonial America. They were smoked or pickled. And they're bait for other fisheries, and that goes to modern times. They're still using bait. Until the moratorium on collection near shore, late 90s, early 2000s, depending on the state, they were widely used for striped bass bait. And they are still commonly used as lobster bait. So early colonial Americans, as you know, built lots of dams. One of the greatest changes in the landscape is the fragmentation of aquatic ecosystems. And they built dams in many coastal ecosystems. These were mostly low-head mill dams. Not much taller than me, the height of this room in some places. And a lot of them were built in the late 1600s and early 1700s. These isolated inland waters like Rogers Lake from the ocean, and this blocked historically important spawning runs for fish. alewife. Okay? It also left behind remnant populations behind those dams, and that's part of the story that we study here at Rogers Lake. Okay, so alewife are a federally listed species of conservation concern. They were petitioned to be threatened and endangered a few years ago, but that did not go through. But they are a species of conservation concern, large part because of habitat loss due to damming. Harvesting, they're widely caught as bycatch in the coastal ocean. And coastal predators. A lot of the coastal predators on alewife have increased over the last few years. But we really think bycatch is the dominant driver of recent decline. And we've done work on bycatch across their range, and still not maintained. Okay, so dams block migration. So this is the Rogers Dam when it was drawn down. And fishways and the removal of dams in some places become the management access to try and restore alewife to their historical spawning grounds. But behind those dams, we often have a landlocked or resident population of alewife that complete their entire life cycle in fresh water. So in Rogers Lake, there is a landlocked population. That landlocked population has been here based on all the evidence we have for hundreds of years. Okay? And they complete their entire life cycle in fresh water. They spawn, grow to maturity, and reproduce repeatedly within Rogers Lake. We think, well, all of the systems that we study that are landlocked or behind dams, we believe this is a pretty common event in the landscape. New England, historically, with beaver dams, where it was locked to run. So not only would fish have been forced to go to the next stream over to reproduce, some of them might have been trapped behind the beaver dams. Alewife can't jump like salmon, so they can't jump over a dam. They could certainly have gone over the dam if there was flow over it and gone to the ocean. But what we believe is because beaver dams would have been in place for about a decade, that's sort of the average duration, that they had to hold in fresh water for at least a few winters. And then when the dam blew out because of a storm or Easter, whatever blew out the dam, then they would be able to go out to the ocean. It wasn't permanent, but it was part of the landscape. And we believe this is why they landlocked. But of course, human-built dams that have lasted now hundreds of years. So, landlocked alewife are found all across eastern North America. They invaded the Great Lakes. They reached Lake Michigan in 1949. So we know an enormous amount about landlocked alewife. My lab started to work on Connecticut alewife in Connecticut. Very little was known about them. Most everything we knew about alewife was from studying the Finger Lakes in upstate New York and the Laurentian Great Lakes across the upper Midwest. So landlocked alewife are considered an invasive species in the upper Midwest. They're very well studied. They support a major fishery. They support salmon fishery in the Great Lakes. It's a multi-billion-dollar-a-year fishery. And they restructure food webs throughout the Great Lakes so they're not native. Okay? Rogers, though, has been and continues to be home to a healthy population of landlocked alewife. When we started this work in 2004, there were landlocked alewife. And I'll give you the history of Rogers in a minute, but we believe this population goes back hundreds of years. It's always been here, actually. Well, even we're modifying the landscape. So Cornelia Lily Twining, her family lives in the watershed, did her senior thesis with me at Yale. She's now a professor in Europe. She looked at the environmental history of alewife in Rogers Lake. Here's a little history of Rogers. So the dam at Lower Mill Pond was a grist or a corn mill that was built in 1672. And that would have been the first blockage of the river leading into Rogers Lake. That suggests that Rogers was isolated, and the population of alewife that are in there probably dates back to 72 or maybe 77 when the Upper Mill Pond Dam was built. Okay, so we've got a corn mill, a sawmill, and then turned into a grist mill, all back in the late 1600s. Okay? So this population dates to there. Rogers, by the way, originally was two separate basins, was not one complete lake. So if you think about the bathymetry, morphology of Rogers, you've got the northern basin and the southern basin. those would have been connected by probably a shallow wet area historically. The dam has raised the lake level enough to connect those two basins. If you boat through that area, you know it's pretty shallow in the middle of summer, right? You can see the rocks. There's a good sized rock that we have to avoid in there. So it's a dry year. You can imagine drop that level another, say, 6 feet. And that's what it would look like, 2 separate basins. Okay, so Marvin's Pond to the north and Great or Rogers Pond to the south with this marshy region in between. So here's a state survey. 17. In 1798, there's a plan to build a paper mill at the outlet of Great Rogers Pond, and Rogers Lake, as we know it, was formed in 1813. Okay? So that's the dam that created Rogers. Probably lost migration in the 1670s, but certainly after 1798. Okay, so we believe that the population has been in there since the late 1600s, but certainly migration was lost when the dam at the outlet. Okay. Questions about that? Okay, so about 350 years before present for this population. Okay, so many landlocked populations of alewives around the region were stocked. So Uncas Pond is a good example of it. This was a lake that was certainly stocked, and there are records of early stocking. So you can imagine both state departments of natural resources around the region, DEP, but also just anglers who were looking for more orange fish were stocking alewives. But the origin of the coastal populations, like this one in Rogers, was unknown when we started doing this work. We didn't actually know that there were no stocking records for Rogers Lake. When I looked at the stocking records of lakes in Connecticut, Uncas, Black, and other lakes further up all had stocking records. There were no stocking records for Rogers. Yeah.
So were they an affected species to stock of orange fish? Like, as opposed to native fish that would be orange fish on the line?
We would not stock them anymore. Yeah. Right? So we now know that they have pretty large impact on the ecosystems in which we stock them. Just those ecosystems and the species of them aren't well adapted. But they are very good forage fish for pelagic predators like salmon in the Great Lakes. To walleye, they'd be pretty good for walleye. And that's great for most of the species you have around here, main species you have around here. So pickerel will pick up on them. And we do see some changes in the behavior of chain pickerel from the landlocked alewives. Bass will eat them, but they're really an offshore pelagic fish. And so the predators that can take advantage of them the best are offshore pelagic predators. And there aren't really a lot of those. So I've worked on a bunch of different populations in Connecticut, Patagonia, Rogers, Salton Skull, Quannapoug, Amos, Long, okay, a bunch of lakes that have connections to the ocean. And we did both genetics and a whole bunch of other studies, paleo studies, to try and understand when these populations became landlocked. So the genetics, big range of estimates on the genetics, they suggest that they all became isolated about 300 to 500 years ago. Okay, that's what we can get from the genetics. We've taken cores, we've taken the sediments out of the lake, and from that we can infer when there might have become a landlocked population. Those all point to around the late 1600s in Rogers, for example. That's what the paleo. Oh, and then of course we have this history, right? We have this environmental history that also points to the late 1600s, 1670s. So it all kind of converges on that at the time. There's big life history differences. This is an adult anadromous alewife. Okay, it is 10 inches or so, about 140 or 240 to 260 millimeters is what we get for an average adult anadromous alewife. This is an adult landlocked alewife from Rogers Lake, right? Much smaller. They reach 4.5, 5 inches at most. Much smaller. Okay? This is probably a 3-year-old. This is a fish that spent 3 years in the ocean. This fish has probably only spent about a year year and a few months in the lake, okay? And it's already reproducing at that age. And these are some of the lake history differences that we've studied and shown exist as we fish. So anadromous, they run in the spring. They show up in late March, early April, in most lakes. They spawn in April into May, and then they leave. The adults leave. So adults really don't do any foraging when they're in a lake. Okay? They come in, they might eat a little bit, not a lot of evidence for much predation. They spawn and they leave. The young hatch out in May, roughly, into June, at which point they then spend the next roughly 6 months of their life in the lake, growing to be about anywhere between about this big and about that big. Okay, depending on that. So landlocked though, every day there's a landlocked fish in Rogers Lake. So you go out there right now with our net and you would catch landlocked alewife out there. That's not what you find in lakes that have an active population. You go out there now, you won't find any. And it's different than how much time they spend. Landlocked alewife have a smaller mouth, a smaller gape. You won't really see it. If you take two of the same size fish, and you measure them, they're going to have a smaller mouth. They've got gill rakers that help them filter their food. They're narrower than landlocked fish. They're more football shaped, more fusiform. They have a smaller head. There's some evidence, we see it all the time, that their eye size is different. They don't actually square there. Okay? So different morphology. If you held both of them in your hand, you'd be hard pressed to tell them apart. But if we measure them, we can see these as differences. Okay? And my team will work with them daily and know which ones are landlocked and then swear that they can tell the difference. I think we probably can. Anadromous alewife always eat the biggest zooplankton they can find. So these are the small crustaceans that are grazers. They'll take the biggest ones they can find. They just keep stripping those big ones out of the water column. So they're positively sized like this. So like you go to a buffet and you take the biggest burger, and then the next biggest burger, and the next biggest, so the biggest pizza, they work their way down. Landlocked don't seem to care. They eat anything. They'll take the big burger, they'll take the piece of pizza, they don't care. They'll eat anything that they run into. Neutral that way. Whatever's the most out there, they'll eat. Landlocked alewife, when we're talking about them as forage fish, we only find them really offshore. Yeah, if we could do some nets near shore, we'll catch one or two, but they're really only offshore. They can only forage on things that are above their head. This is where they came out of the Finger Lakes. Very particular. The anadromous young, they go inshore, and they pick insects out of the weed beds. Very different use of the lake. So they can partition the lake in different ways. Okay? So very big differences in life history, behavior, and that has an impact on the zooplankton. So this is Daphnia, still large-bodied grazer, the cow of the aquatic world, the most effective grazer on algae in any lake. This is a predator called Mesocyclops. It's a copepod. It eats small zooplankton like these, Bosmina. Okay? So these are all out in Rogers Lake. You won't find many Daphnia in Rogers Lake because they're very vulnerable to predation by fish like alewife. And so there's a famous study that worked on lakes all over Connecticut, including Rogers Lake, by a faculty member and an undergraduate at Yale, published in '65. One of the most famous papers in my field, where they looked at lakes that had no alewife and lakes that had alewife, and they were all landlocked. They didn't know they were landlocked. In fact, they didn't differentiate. They didn't even know they were anadromous or landlocked at the time. But all of them were landlocked. When you have no alewife, you've got these big grazers like Daphnia and these big predators in the water column. When you have alewife, they all get eaten. The alewife are among the best fish at eating these large zooplankton anywhere in the world. They eliminate all the large bodies. Okay. So large body zooplankton are the most effective grazers in a lake. They're also really important for juvenile fish. So this Daphnia moves energy from algae up to fish very effectively. But they're very vulnerable to that fish predation because they're visible. They're about 1 millimeter to 1.5 millimeters in height. So if you take, like we take zooplankton, net toes body predators prey on others, so they're also important to fish. And then you get these small body grazers that are much less effective. Okay, and so when the alewives come in, they strip out all those predators and they strip out all of those most effective predators, herbivores in a lake. Okay, so lakes that have landlocked alewives, like Rogers Lake, have a low density of small body zooplankton all the time. So when we go out to Rogers, you're going to find Buzzmina most of the year and other species of small body zooplankton. You'll occasionally find larger zooplankton, but this is what you're going to find year round. In lakes with anadromous alewives, though, because they're not there all year, the lakes alternate between having large body zooplankton, especially over winter and in the spring, and small body zooplankton, just like Rogers, later in the summer. Okay, so you get these alternations. And then, so I just said it, okay? So in lakes that have no alewives, you'll see these large zooplankton all year round. Okay, so you got these life history differences and these differences in the zooplankton that come about, that happen. And what we get there is what's called a trophic cascade. Okay, this idea that the alewife have an impact on the herbivores, and that can show up on the amount of algae that's in it. So Rogers Lake has always had landlocked alewives, and it's always had this configuration, right, of lots of fish that eat zooplankton, not a lot of zooplankton. You get more algae per unit of nutrients than you would in a lake that has no alewife, for example. And this is the kind of relationship we get, the amount of algal biomass versus some measure of nutrient input. And you can see that when you have no alewife, you get relatively low algae per nutrient loading, and you get more when they're landlocked in an adjuvant fish. Okay, so these impacts, these differences in alewife propagate throughout the whole food web in really interesting ways. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but just give you an overview. The difference between anadromous and landlocked alewife drives evolution in these herbivores. We've shown that these herbivores evolved in response to different information in two forms of alewife. Okay? So, Daphne lakes with anadromous alewife grow faster and mature earlier. They have more offspring, and they invest more in sexual reproduction. They mostly reproduce asexually, but occasionally they'll reproduce sexually, and that happens more when you have the anadromous population, the landlocked population. Of course, this regulates algal biomass. So these Daphne and lakes that have anadromous alewife actually regulate algae better because they grow much faster than the Daphne and lakes. The difference in these two forms of alewife change the foraging morphology of bluegill. So bluegill that are found with landlocked alewife have converged in their morphology. So they grow better on small-bodied zooplankton, just like they find in lakes with landlocked alewife. They prey upon all sides of the zooplankton, just like landlocked alewife do. And they have a foraging morphology that's better able to capture the small-bodied zooplankton that they're exposed to year-round. So this alewife are having this effect on the food web, and that's affecting other species in these lakes. Also change the habitat use and the lipids in pickerel. So your native top predator in all these lakes is chain pickerel. And in lakes with landlocked alewife, we find chain pickerel out in open water, not where you would expect to find chain pickerel typically. But we have found them in landlocked lakes like Rogers out in open water, foraging on the landlocked alewife. They prey upon alewife more often. And in lakes with either landlocked or anadromous alewife anymore, they have much greater lipids. So alewife are really good for chain pickerel lipid storage. They also change the growth rate of largemouth bass when they're young. So all fish, when they start off as juveniles, eat these zooplankton. Alewife eat them all through their entire life. The largemouth bass eat them for a few weeks, a couple months of their life. So in lakes with landlocked alewife, largemouth bass have slower growth rates in their first year because they're competing for that zooplankton. But then they switch, and that forces them to switch to insects and other fish more slowly. They don't make that switch as quickly because they're growing more slowly. But we have some data that suggests that adult bass grow better because of the landlocked alewife. So there's this trade-off between early growth and late growth. We don't actually know what impact that has long term. There's that evidence of Okay, so that's the difference between these two forms of fish. The DEP opened up the fishway in 2014, okay? So we've got a population of landlocked alewife that likely dates to the 1670s. And, you know, over 300 years later, now we've opened this lake back up to migratory alewife. So anadromous alewife are now in Rogers Lake for the first time in around 350 years. That happened after 2014. So the interesting thing about Rogers, from my point of view, is we're restoring anadromous alewife to a lake that already has a landlocked population. The question is, what's going to happen? What's going to happen ecologically? What's going to happen with the landlocked population that's already here? Are they going to be successful in the restoration? Right? So a whole suite of questions become really interesting in this context. And no one's looked at it. And it's never been looked at anywhere else. Okay? So again, what happens when anadromous alewife are reintroduced into a lake that already contains a landlocked alewife population? We just don't know. When we started this work, we had no idea what was going to happen. Okay? So this is called secondary contact. This is when you've got two lineages that have evolved in isolation, and then they come back together after they've differentiated. Okay? So it takes typically millions of years for species to actually form, become, and to become reproductively isolated, making it impossible for them to reproduce. But there are other mechanisms that can reduce the amount of gene flow and can change the interaction so that you're not really talking about two not talking about one single interacting population, okay? So we didn't know whether they could reproduce. We expected that they would. We didn't know that. If they can't reproduce, would they be in competition with each other? If they can reproduce, what's going to happen? We're going to see gene flow between the landlocked and the anadromous fish. Just didn't know. There's no real analog to this, okay? Anadromous alewife spawn earlier than landlocked alewife. So down the road, in Brine Lake and a few of the other lakes we studied, we know that the anadromous fish are spawning earlier than the landlocked fish here in Rogers. How much earlier? Well, anadromous populations start in April. The runs start in April. Spawning begins in late April. It peaks when the water temperature is about 18 degrees Celsius. Okay. There's really no difference among the lakes, and that's because they're coming in from the ocean. Right? They're coming in from the ocean. They have other cues. They spawn when temperature hits about 18 degrees Celsius, and then they leave. So this is two of our anadromous populations down the road, Dodge and Brine. In landlocked populations, spawning begins in May. Peaks somewhere around 22 to 26 degrees Celsius. Very long period of spawning in lakes like Rogers Lake. So longer spawning period. And there's significant differences among lakes and among years. You can have earlier spawning in Rogers and later spawning in Rogers. Again, is different in Rogers. Variation all around the landscape. Okay? The amount of overlap that we could predict before we started any of this restoration was that there would be some years of overlap and some years of no overlap in spawning between the anadromous fish and the landlocked. Okay? In Rogers, it was between 0 and 10%. Patagans, it was a little higher than Patagans with their spawning. Okay, Fishway opens in 2014, and this is what we've seen since 2014. Okay, this is the number of adults that we have stocked along with the DEP, and the number of adults that have returned into Rogers Lake through the Fishway naturally. Okay? So we started stocking in the spring 2015. We were pulling fish out from Mary Stubbe at the time. Just before 2015, when I wrote the first grant to do this work, there was a very healthy run at Mary Stubbe. And when we started this work, there were only about 150 fish that made it to Mary Stubbe that year, and we moved all of them into Rogers Lake. So the original idea was to allow these fish to move up naturally, or to help them move up by moving them out of from Mary Stubbe up into Rogers. That didn't happen. Okay, something happened with that run, Seen that a couple times. So we stocked fish from Bride Lake, which is, connects directly to Long Island Sound, it's not far from here. We stocked a little over 1,000 fish in 16, almost 3,000 in 17, over 3,000 in 18 and 19, 5,000 in 2020. Down. We stopped after 2020, both because it was very labor intensive, but also because the natural reproduction started to come. So these are fish that spawned, we genotyped almost all of these fish here, spawned in Rogers Lake, sometime back in here, and returned. The first returns came in 2019, first natural returns came in 2019. Those fish were born in 2017. Most all of them. Okay, so 2017 was a good year. But a couple thousand these 2 years, we thought we were off to the races and we would be able to stop stocking and the population. I think what's going on in years like this is we've got a lot of offshore bycatches, captures all the fish that are coming back. 2013, things got a little better. Last spring was a great year for an adjuvant Western Rogers Lake. Okay? Almost over 13,000 came up at fish way and spawned in Rogers Lake last year. We'll see what happens in 2 months. Right? We'll know in a couple of months what this year's like. But this is a good sign that an adjuvant Lake are both spawning in the lake and doing well. Okay? So are an adjuvant Lake spawning? Yes. I'll give you some more data on that in a minute. Is there gene flow? To figure this out, we've had to capture thousands of juvenile fish every year and genotype all of them. We're looking for a needle in a haystack. We're looking for that signal that they were reproducing well. Okay? So we've got the fish coming back, and because I've shown you that there's natural returns, you know they're spawning. But we didn't know this in those first years, okay? So this is the percentage of landlocked juveniles in the samples we collected, and the percentage of anadromous juveniles in the samples that we collect. We do this in August to see, people out in the middle of the lake. Usually the second week in August at night, we're up at the landing, that's us, collecting thousands of individuals, and then we genotype them. So 2015, we didn't catch any anadromous. By the way, we know there were some in there. I'll tell you why in a minute. 6.5%. Next year, we're anadromous, 15%. So you can see the number of anadromous, the proportion of the fish we caught that were anadromous. Taking along doing pretty well. So I'm going to give you another column in just a minute. So the other question we're asking is about gene flow. So we've got pure landlocked fish, and that's this column. We've got pure anadromous fish, and we've got hybrids. That's where we get to 100. So this first year, we didn't have any hybrids. We didn't have any anadromous that we caught, but we caught a couple hybrids. In here. So doesn't add up. But we know there's a little bit going on. When we start to see hybrids really showing up in 2017, and there's a lot. And by 2021, the last year we genotyped, we're still working on it. There are more hybrid alewives in the lake than there are pure landlocked. Okay? So what's going on here is the anadromous are coming in and out. They're spawning. Their young go out to the ocean and come back. And they're doing their own thing. Every once in a while, and 17 was the first year that we had this once in a while, there's enough overlap in spawning that there's gene flow between the landlocked and the anadromous, and we get first-generation hybrids. Okay? So that's what we saw in 17. These were first-generation hybrids between landlocked and anadromous. After that, most of these here are second and third generation, what are called backcrops. These were hybrids that stayed in Rogers Lake and spawned with landlocked fish. This is what we call a backcrop. So you've got hybrids that stayed in the lake and spawned with pure landlocked genotypes, creating this what's called a hybrid swarm, this big mess of genotypes that are mostly landlocked-like. In fact, all of those backcrosses do what landlocked fish do. They look like landlocked fish. They pretty much do what landlocked fish do. The hybrids, though, are really interesting. First-generation hybrids are really interesting because don't know why. I'm trying to figure some of this out. But some of them went out to the ocean, and we know this because when we genotype some of the adults coming back in, some of them were the hybrids that were born in the lake. Yeah.
When you stop the fish, you can go back and freeze.
Sure.
Were those wild?
Yeah, these were all wild and natural.
From the ocean, when you bring them to the lake.
That's right. Yeah, we caught them in a river, out going into the fire. That is gone. We usually stop them on.
My earlier question, I didn't have, is how do the fish, what do they actually go up in the boat?
Right, we don't, right, we don't know, well, there was a healthy population below the dam. So there are 3 dams leading up to Rogers Lake, and there are fish ways on the first 2. And the fish were already moving up in there, just natural. So we knew there was a natural population, but that population stopped running as we started. So we had to jump start. We don't know exactly what alewife used, but we know from lots of fish that they have a naval homing. They can basically smell the river that they grew up in. But alewife, we believe, stray a lot. So salmon in the Pacific Northwest have a cyclodelta that's like 99%. 99% that come back to exactly where they were spawned. Sometimes even to the same, like, couple hundred meters. We don't think alewife do that. We think that they're kind of they got a target, but there's an alewife river stream in every town in New England. They don't have to go back to the exact same one. But 70%, 80%, we don't know. We really don't. But they are coming back. We know that because we know the parents of some of these. We genotyped all of these adults that we put in, and therefore we can figure out the parents of some of these. We've got a paper where we're working on that right now. We can tell that, some of these returns in these years were born this year. We know who their parents were. We know when we stopped them. Okay? That's how we know that the hybrids are staying and leaving. Because we picked, Andrew, do you remember when we picked up the first hybrid? 2020, yeah. So like we picked up a fish in here. This is the needle in the haystack. We can't afford to genotype all of these. What we do, 500 maybe? We did like 500 of these fish and we picked up hybrids. That is kind of remarkable. Like it is like finding that needle in the haystack. That means that there's some really interesting things. Okay. So can they reproduce with each other? Yeah, they do. Skip this. Okay. Do they compete? Well, they're reproducing, so competition might not matter. But they don't really compete also. And that's because there is considerable overlap in their diet. They basically eat the same things for most of the year. But landlocked alewife are better at foraging out in the middle of the water, out in the open lake. Anadromous alewife can go near shore. And so what we see when we sample Rogers, inshore, offshore, is we will find mostly landlocked young out in the middle of the water. And we will find an anadromous, this is in August, mostly near shore. So they're partitioning the lake. They're basically saying, you stay here, I'm going to go there. They're adapted to these different habitats over the last few hundred years. Then anadromous alewife, not only can they forage in places in the lake that landlocked can't effectively, they just leave. They just go out to the ocean. So when there's not a lot of salt lines, if they're big enough, they just leave. And so water over the dam, the Rogers outlet dam, is important because those anadromous will just start going out whenever they're big enough, whenever they've completed the food. Okay, so what are the long-term dynamics? So we've been collecting, I should have updated this last time I gave this talk. Young of the year fish in August every single year. When we genotype them, we get their densities, their habitat use, that give you some of this. But this is what the data actually looks like, okay? So this is the number that we estimate of young juvenile alewife in Rogers Lake from 2013 up until last summer, okay? We have not genotyped these fish, so we don't know who's out there, but we've genotyped all of these. So in 13 and 14 and 15, there were only landlocked alewives, only landlocked juveniles. This is the density. There are about 200,000. And this year, about 130, almost 500,000 in 15. We started seeing some anadromous here in 16. This is 17, and one of the best years we've ever seen in Rogers Lake. These anadromous here became the returns of 2 years later, the adults that came back. And here are the hybrids, the first hybrids that we're picking up. And then you see the dynamics through time. So this is the population dynamics of the juvenile alewives. This is how it breaks down. Still have a lot of landlocked throughout this. As you can see, the hybrids now outnumber the pure landlocked. They're basically doing the same thing, most of them, but that's what's out there now. We don't know what's out here for the last 3 years because we haven't finished genotyping these things. COVID put us back quite a bit. Okay.
Every couple of years, there's a drawdown in the fall. It
could. Depends on when the drawdown is. They're mostly going to leave in September, October. But they can hold over pretty well. I don't know if that's there was water over the dam when I drove by this evening. You know, they'll go out. Ride Lake, where most of our studies have been for anadromous, will often be dry in August and September. And then the first big rainstorm in October and November, the water will flow again and they'll go out. We've seen that as late as January. So there's enough hydrologic variability in the region that they're okay. But the best thing for them, for the anadromous, would be for water going over the dam all the time. Really, August, September. If there were a dry period, it'd be okay. And do we see when there's no water going over the dam? We'll see them sometimes pile up there.
Yeah, and they just basically take over. More.
They're incredibly adaptable fish. They spawn in, polar. So, but the best habitat is a lake like Rogers. This is where they're going to be best. Okay. What's changed in Rogers? So we've been sampling since 2004. So here's some data out of Rogers that gives you some idea of what's changed over the last 2 decades. So we take physical limnology, we take temperature and dissolved oxygen profiles. We measure water clarity, we measure pH and a few other things also. We measure nutrients. The key ones are nitrogen and phosphorus. I'll give you that data. We measure the amount of algal biomass. Of course, we measure zooplankton. I talked about that earlier. I won't give you long-term zooplankton data, but that's what we talked about earlier. This is the oxygen and temperature profiles. Temperature here and oxygen profiles here for Rogers Lake last summer, summer 24. So here's temperature. You can see the warm water in the upper layer during the summer here. So this is June, July, and August, basically. And you can see the cold water below the thermocline, the deep water at Rogers Lake. So it's always basically 4 or 5 degrees. You can see turnover, early spring, so we started sampling in early April. The temperature was basically the same in the water column, top to bottom. And you can see us getting close to turnover here. Well, probably a turnover right here in November of this last year. 4 or 5 months ago. And this is dissolved oxygen. Similar pattern, low oxygen. In fact, you have anoxia at the bottom of Rogers Lake during most of the summer and early autumn. Here's turnover. You can tell it's turnover because there's a lot of oxygen in the entire water column. So in the spring, the whole water column mixes. You get oxygen all the way to the bottom. You can see it's not quite turnover when we stop sampling in November, late October, November, because you get a little bit of anoxia here going on. But probably a couple weeks later, the whole water column will turn over completely. By the way, it's inverse in the winter. We don't sample the winter. You'll get inverted profile in the winter, especially under ice. Okay, this is what it looks like in 2024. These are the long-term averages for temperature and oxygen in Rogers Lake. No changes. Okay? No significant changes in temperature and oxygen. This is the annual mean for temperature and oxygen in the lake. This is this last summer here on both of these. No significant. This is water clarity. This is water water clarity in 2024, the monthly averages for water clarity in April through November. Again, this is down, so here's 2 meters right there. September was relatively good for Rogers Lake. Good week in Rogers. Here's the long-term average mean in water clarity, going from around 3 in the early 2000s down towards almost 2 meters in the last few years. Okay? So this is the big change in Rogers Lake. Water clarity has gotten shallower. Okay? Water clarity has gone from about 3 meters when we first started sampling, and some good years here and there, down to pretty consistently a little above 2 meters. That's the long-term change we've seen in Rogers. Nitrogen and phosphorus. So here's phosphorus over here, nitrogen here. These are the 2 key limiting nutrients. They regulate how much algae and macrophytes grow in the lake. They've both been increasing over the last 20 years in Rogers Lake. Okay? So both have been going up. Interesting, that's some weird cyclical dynamics in here. Don't know what's going on with that, but something pushed them back down in the early, around 2014, 2015. They come back up. But the long-term trend, all the way back to 2005, is slow increases in nitrogen and phosphorus. No dramatic changes in recent years for any of these, but this long-term trend is ongoing. We've done some samples, some tributaries last year to try and look at where some of these nutrients might be coming into the watershed, into the lake from the watershed. All of these sites, 1 through 5, have high concentrations of nitrogen and phosphorus coming in. The highest is over here at 5. It's lower when it hits 4. Okay? So you've got some nutrient loading coming in from all of these tributaries. So, this is pretty haphazard sampling. To really get an idea of loading, you have to do things like storm sampling. That's where most of the nutrients come in from these storm events. You need to know base flow. But this gives you some idea, starts to give you some idea of where some of the loading might be coming from. Doesn't even get at what are likely septic system leaks also coming directly in. Don't know where that's the magnitude of that, but that's probably long-term that's driving your nitrogen and phosphorus is loading from the watershed phenomenon. Algal biomass, interestingly, you'd expect, because water clarity is being reduced, the nutrients are going up, you'd expect to see more algae in the lake. Not seeing that. Okay? We're not seeing a significant increase. Maybe a little bit of a sign here, but again, you get this sort of cyclic dynamic that shows up in the nutrients too, shows up in the algae. But long-term, no significant trend there. Could be that you're getting more blooms at the surface, therefore we're not taking it out the surface. Could be that you're getting differences in composition of the algae that's affecting water quality, but not the total biomass. Could be the distribution of the water column. Haven't looked at the data, you probably could. But we're not seeing huge algal blooms. We're not seeing big changes in algal biomass. So being pulled in the food web in other ways, and something else is changing that water clarity independent of the total algal biomass. Can't quite explain that, but that's what's been going on. Okay, so long-term increases in nutrients, long-term decrease in water clarity, certainly something to pay attention to, but no significant changes in the ecology of Rogers that we've noticed over the last 20 years, and certainly nothing in the last couple of years that was pronounced. That changes it. This is sort of slow, long-term shifts. For our point of view, from a research point of view, still ongoing evolution. So Rogers, from a basic science point of view, from a management or a restoration point of view, becomes really interesting because we've got this crucible of evolution going on. And so we're going to be writing a series of papers that use what's going on in Rogers Lake to inform the restoration efforts of alewife across the range. So this is really fascinating. Ongoing research, my grant that I'm working on right now, the National Science Foundation funding, ends in 2016, or 2027, pardon me. Given the current political climate, I'm not sure that we'll be going this past 2020, just so you're aware. Part of this is that all of the genotyping that we do, that is the basis for the funding, comes from a federal Fish and Wildlife Lab in California, UC Santa Cruz, University of California, Santa Cruz. They've just been told they're going to get a 50% budget cut starting next quarter, fiscal quarter for them. That lab may be gone. Okay? If that happens, I don't have the ability, that's a collaborative project. I won't have the ability to keep this up. So just be aware that we may not be sampling Rogers Lake after this summer. Maybe the last year for us to do this work. We are going to continue the genetic sampling through that. We're looking for this ongoing gene flow, so that will continue. And we'll continue sampling the lake through this grant, but that's one more summer. Okay. That's where we're headed. Okay, with that though, I do need to thank all my funding sources. This has been heavily funded by the National Science Foundation. So the basic research we're doing here informs a whole bunch of questions, basic questions about the ecology and evolution of aquatic ecosystems. I've had funding from Connecticut DEC, from EPA, from Connecticut Water Resources, and of course from Yale. So a lot of funding sources gone into this, all of them. With that, I'm going to say thank you for listening to me babble for almost an hour. I'll take any questions you have. Thank you.
So I have a question on the water clarity. You can see that some kind of brown, something going on. What's that brown something?
So, is it brown like tea? Is it brown like tea, or is it particulate matter brown?
It looks particulate matter.
So, I'll give you two answers. Probably one that won't apply. It's brown like tea, that's called dissolved organic carbon. The stuff that leaches out of your tea, makes your tea brown. That's organic carbon that's leaching out. That's very commonly will make a lake darker and block light. And that comes out of wetlands, bogs, things like that. That's decay of organic matter. That's probably happening because also that brown stuff is organic matter. That's decay. I don't know what that is. Your weeds could be something else. I don't know what it is. But that, as it breaks down, is also going to leach out that organic matter. All organic matter, color play. We don't look at the color. There's more sophisticated analysis to look at water color. We don't do that. I've never looked at that. The best we have is, I can tell you that algae is not changing. It's not noticeably in our data set. But we're getting less water clarity. So that would suggest that you're getting breakdown of other organic matter, not algae that's blocking the light. I don't know where that's coming from. Andrew, you're going to So I do know you often spray to control the macrophytes, and we've seen that when they come in and put the chemicals down to control the weeds. That is going to liberate all of that organic matter. All of that organic matter when it dies stays in the lake and rocks. And that is likely also adding to the nutrients. If you were able to harvest that and remove it, but it's all staying there, you've got a bit of a trade-off in there, and that may be increasing the results of reducing the light concentration. Not the worst thing in the world, but that may be why we're seeing this disconnect between the water clarity and the algae.
Some of the things would be taking the oil out of podcast, especially, I don't know how far it was back in the land here. Yeah.
We know that, so we have done genetics across the range and tracked where that bycatch comes from, and it comes from southern Connecticut. And so we know that the Atlantic herring fishery is largely catching the national millet that come out of southern New England, basically, not named. As they go up around the Cape,
Yeah.
Mostly as they go up around the Cape, there are a number of intercept areas. I can't remember all of them. You might actually remember better than I can, but. There's a spatial overlap, and we know that some of those trawlers, midwater trawlers, are taking entire trawls full of alewife. They don't want alewife typically. They'll become those, you might as well do something with them, but that's a big problem, and it's been litigated. Something that the local DEP folks are quite frustrated with, as they try to restore alewife in fun. They've been citing, you can see that with even our numbers, right? Where it looks like it was doing great, then it dropped. Looks like it was doing great, we'll see. But yeah, it's the herring fishery. We worked on cormorants, other people have worked on striped bass. There's no doubt that the coastal predators take alewife, but not in the numbers required to cause the problem. Maybe like very locally, not regionally.
There's a little bit of overhang like that, small thing, but compared to the middle of the I was struck by the amount of natural returns that I saw. Got an order of magnitude jump in previous years, so quickly, quickly jumped on the full use of the first year. In 2024, the area 2 capture, so area 2 basically max out keep out on the south and inland, so all of Vineyard Sound, all of Long Island Sound, Long Island Sound. They caught almost 90%. So I'm wondering if there's a linkage between.
What was it in 2022? I think this was a really bad year.
I think so.
A bad year for bycatch. There was a lot of bad bycatch.
Yeah, I didn't look at that because I was curious about that number, so. There may be a connection.
So one of the things that's really interesting in all of this concept is alewife, as they move between the coastal and ocean points, they're actually linking the ecology of these two very disparate ecosystems, right? What's going on in the Gulf of Maine, that's where they spend most of their time as adults, and the fishery that's intercepting them is impacting the number of alewife that are coming back and potentially the ecology of Rogers Lake. So Rogers, through this migration, is linked to all of the eastern seaboard in a really interesting way. And it's something that we don't really understand well in ecology study, and we think about it, but we don't really understand these impacts. And then you throw in something like the bycatch, where we don't have a great understanding of the bycatch all the time. Really, it's only been the last 5-10 years that we've understood that there was a connection. Before we started some work back around here on the range-wide genetics, there was a doubt that any bycatch effect on these runs. So we're still learning a lot about these.
As long, regardless of your funding, as long as that fishway at Rogers Lake Dam is on, this cycle will continue and evolve.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I believe that the DEP is committed to continuing to count here. There's a fish counter on the fishway now, so we can count the number of fish going through. Are we counting that, or are they? We're doing that. So this is a bit of an issue. So we'll be talking. I'll let them know, but you may not know how many fish are coming in. You might want to work with. We can work with you on this. You might want to work with the DEP on how to maintain that, how to count that, so you know what's going on. So this is one of the big problems with almost all lakes. If you don't have this kind of long-term data or this kind of study, you just don't know. But yeah, as long as that fishway is open, you're going to continue, we hope, to have natural returns.
But that fishway is considered in the run.
It is third. And they do very Scooby, which is the first in that is on the indexation. So they'll know. Like, we knew this was coming because of Mary Scooby. And we know it's kind of what's going on when the DEP is out there counting. So if you stay in contact with the Niagara fish folks in the state, they can give you some idea, but you won't know exactly. Andrew, do we know, like, this was most of the fish that came up?
No, I think about
Half, okay. Is that true in most of these years?
it's a little bit lower.
Okay. So here, we had a lot of fish in Mary Scooby, more fish in Mary Scooby than we were pushing all the way up. But once it got running, we got more fish coming up for Rogers that are stopping at Mary Scooby. The habitat between Mary Scooby and Rogers is okay, fine. They can probably support 10 to 20,000 fish run. Rogers, so Bride Lake, this is us stocking the fish from Bride Lake. Bride Lake, which is what, a fifth of Rogers' size, roughly, is almost 500,000 adults. Okay? So a much smaller lake that is shallower is supporting 500,000 adults coming in. Rogers can support millions of alewives. You might not want a million in there, but it can support a lot of alewives. It's a big lake relative to some of the ponds where you were getting hundreds of thousands of adults. So yeah, this is just started. And it'll be fine. Rogers doesn't look a whole lot different than Bride. A little bit different, but Bride is doing just fine with 500,000 fish. And the number of cormorants, osprey, night herons, and great blue on Bride is crazy. I don't know what it looks like downstream of the dam, but wherever we've had these restorations, we tend to see orders of magnitude of increase in birds in the spring. When we're stocking, we have lost fish that we're stocking osprey. We'll be chanting, go. Right? So in the early days, when we were stocking just 1,000 adults, everyone was precious, and we watched osprey, ate them, not more than 30, 40 meters off the shoreline, and we're just watching like, okay. Right?
Thanks for the fish though.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, thank you all. We really appreciate your time. Yeah, think about that. You come all the way in from the Gulf of Mexico. Come through on up to the Bride. I think about Bride. Drive you 20 miles down the road.
Yeah, we'll have to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Why not? So that's how long is one you got? 18, 20? Yeah. I'm not. We don't need it. Oh, no. I would be that. Yeah. Some of these guys get a little too big on vacation. Don't need it. We have a patio. People, well, people want to be able to go to the patio. It's a nice part. The guy over in the gate who walk on there, step down, climb in, climb out. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, we got more older people that come out. No doubt. But 21 years, that's mine. Really? What? Wow. I don't think they'll make the record available in April. 46 years. Funny school, but.
Oh, is that, what's your face? Because it's been on for an hour and 10 minutes. I think that's Katie or something.
Oh.
Yeah, okay.
Being recorded, yeah.
What you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The good thing for you all is the concentration is not a lot. Right, okay, so. Yeah, okay. I don't know how big these are, but.
There are phones down here.
Yeah. It's just, it drops, but it drops before what happened is this wetland. And we have particulate in total. Yeah, yeah. The particulate, when we let it settle. There's a big drop. There's no way. Which is erosion. But we can look at, you can look at that. But yeah, something's going on. But all of them are fairly high.
That report from 2002, before you started this, said the reason the lake is so hot is because it's cruised by low concentration. And it said back then that it's only a period problem.
I don't know, did they do stream sampling back then? You guys. I will say that.
But like,
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And make sure you have everything. Oh, I know.
Andrew, thank you. Take care. Yeah, all right.
Good, excellent.
Drive safe, thank you.
All right.
Whose equipment is this?
Did you borrow it from?
I borrowed, the projector is from the town.
Oh, okay.
The town loaned me a screen, but it was a little small.
Oh,
I got that from Taylor Reynolds for $20.
oh, okay.
So,
This worked out really well, yeah, the AV.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
we got a lot of publicity for this event.
Yeah, thank you for
Both
doing
Lyme
that.
and Old Lyme. And then, I submitted it to the, Lyme line,
Mm-hmm.
and I never heard from the man. But then I read he included it in there.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, surprise.
Yeah, a great turnout, and people were engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I don't know what that gentleman, like the two gentlemen there that were talking about whatever that
Fish.
thing is around Cape Cod. Like, I don't know what their background is.
They really know.
Yeah, they really,
who were they? Yeah.
I don't know.
yeah.
I have no idea.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
We have some sort of event like this every year.
Yeah. No, it's great. That was very good. All right, so we'll reconvene the meeting. First order is to approval of the minutes. Do you want to read the minutes from last?
Sure. It's long. Attendance is Mark, Dick, Janelle, Tony, Joel, and 4 members of the public. Janelle made the motion to approve minutes from the December meeting, and Tony seconded. Whole business, review expenditures for December 2024. Normal clerical fees and contracted services of $3,555. Unsure what 3218 for voting expense was, maybe cell phone. Status of notice of violations, did receive approval from both Selectmen's Committee and Board of Finance Committee to support our application for the water diversion permit. As required by the notice, we submitted an updated notice of compliance to show them what we are doing and expect to have the study completed around 2/15/25. Water quality update. Did get an analysis of the tributary samples back from Yale. Has been a slow rise in phosphate over the years, which prompted us to look back at a report from about 20 years ago. Looking at water coming in from individual tributaries as shown on the map, shows that Site 5 is higher than the others in hydrogen and phosphorus. Sent this info to water quality contacts who agreed it would be good to get more data at these locations as well as other locations to be able to pinpoint what the issue is, if there is an issue. So we'll continue to do sampling and send them for testing. No lake events. Financial patrol boat startup this season. Boat is normally in the water a week before Memorial Day, which is 5/26 this year. We'll likely start posting the job in March, and we will review the job description in February to ensure it still makes sense. We'll need to set up a shared spreadsheet for scheduling of the patrol boat operators. Potential speaker schedule. Confirms with Dale that David Post, professor, will present at our meeting in February to discuss water quality. Janelle will get his bio on town website and RLA website to publicize. Mark will work with Joel to try to coordinate a speaker regarding invasive species. Events magazine submissions are due to the town on the following dates: February 7th, May 2nd, July 25th, October 24th. Public comment, Tom B. from 11 Townlands Road. East Lots of Winter has probably tripled since last year. Would like to see consideration for plot control submitted from RLA. We'll also be speaking with Parks and Rec Department. We've got a problem and it is going to continue to grow. This is the perfect time to see collaboration between Parks and Rec and RLA. Believe this is necessary. Fox left previously when Parks and Rec hired on, but we have proven that mechanical attempts don't work. There are several businesses in and around New London County who offer the service to dogs. These will start to nest in February, early March, and if we can do this before they nest, we will have a better chance at handling the situation. Not one thing by itself will continuously work. It must be combined, and so federal leave. 2 hourly members were notified today that someone on the northwest side of the lake shot at geese today. I'm sure if these were harmed, but the event did happen. Anyone observes this activity, it is important to record date and time, take pictures, and get as much info as possible so the info can be shared with the environmental league so they can follow up. So made a motion to adjourn at 8:32 and Nick seconded.
Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
No.
Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as read?
I make a motion to approve the minutes as read.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Here is the next item is budget. Actually, after I printed these out, I realized probably wasn't worthwhile. The only expense we had was, clerical fees from last month. So there's nothing else really to discuss in terms of the budget. I have, in terms of the budget for next year, I think we talked last time, our budget was reviewed by selectmen and approved by them. We have not been scheduled to go before, finance yet. So when, we just move the same budget along once that happens. But so far we haven't heard anything.
Who handles the registration of the boat? The town? There is no?
It's been an argument for years. The trailer's not registered either.
The town.
We don't have a sticker on the boat?
Doesn't have to be.
Why?
It's
Because it's the
a
town?
Connecticut law that we went through this before.
Okay.
And it does not need, the boat does not need to be registered. And the trailer's
Okay.
not either. Yeah, the trailer's not either.
So is
No, I
the
don't know.
boat gonna need the invasive species stamp? If it's not registered, then I imagine it doesn't.
Who's getting this?
Oh, you are. You read my submission to the event. I answered that own question, okay.
Okay. I assume there's no questions on expenditures.
No, all good.
In terms of the status of the notice of violation, I had a conference call with Brian Gomel-Bretsky from DEEP, who's basically our go-to person for the process, going through the process of the notice of violation, and Wade Thomas from Nathan Jacobson. Wade Thomas is the gentleman that's helping us with the application for the water diversion. He is also doing he's a hydrologist, and he's doing the hydrology study. Basically, and I've mentioned this probably before, but part of this process is before we can even submit an application, we have to have a sign-off effectively from, and a consultation with Deep Fisheries. And the notice of violation said that we needed to show in the application that, one, it was necessary, which means that that's the hydrology study that says that the level of the lake does affect the surrounding area in terms of the level of groundwater level and has adverse effects there. And two, that we can, if we divert water, that we can do it safely and not harm any fish. So it's part of from the meeting that we had with Brian, he approved the methodology that Wade Thomas had determined on how he would do his study, so they're comfortable that how he was going to develop why this would work, or why this is necessary. He approved of that. And I ran him through the initial, what we were thinking about in terms of the changes to the dam operating and maintenance manual to show that we could effectively operate the sluice gate and not harm fish. He liked our ideas. He asked for a cover letter, a cover to the, to the revised operating and maintenance manual. And then in a month or so, towards the end of this month and the beginning of March, we'll sit down with Fisheries and, walk all this through and see if we get their sign off. That's part of the process. He also extended that our need to submit an application for water diversion to June 1st. So we have some time to work this all through. So that was all promising. And that's why down on the agenda, I want to walk through the changes we made to the operational and maintenance manual, so that you're all in agreement. That's what we'll send to have our initial discussions with Deep. With Deep Fishers, yeah. I'm not looking for. I want you to recognize that this is still a draft, and it will be a draft, because I'm sure Fisheries will come back with something. So we'll have to relook at it and go and finalize it another time. I wanted to at least have your understanding and concurrence that what we're talking about in terms of changes make sense. We'll get to that in a minute. Is there any questions on that? Water quality report we received from Yale. I think we just sort of had a discussion on that. You all have had copies. I didn't know we had jellyfish either. I think we do need to, maybe at our next meeting in March, that's when we've got to start planning for the new water sampling, right? Because we suggested, I think, that we do the initial tributary sampling mid-March to early April, then May and June, then June to August, and then late September to October. So maybe at our March meeting, we can set down when we want to do that.
Yeah, he said to arrange with him to meet and have a coffee, with whoever's interested, to plan this in more detail.
Oh, great. Okay.
So if whoever's interested, either at our next meeting or beforehand, can sort of have a preliminary plan and then reach out to him maybe by email and bring that forward if he wants to discuss it.
Okay.
Up here to
So I have a question. He had made a comment about his funding. Do you know if that's only for the alewives study? Does that apply to the testing that they do for us for free?
He implied, so briefly afterwards, that his ability to do that would be very limited.
Okay.
Going forward, maybe beyond next year.
Beyond the next
26,
budget.
I didn't know if that was end of 26.
I think it's early 26.
Yeah. So it would be good to discuss with him is assuming he does wanting to do this and can't anymore, if we were to focus on just the most important tasks, because what he's shown over 20 years, some things are pretty stable, maybe we don't have to do that each time, but some things are really important, and we need to do that. So if we were to plan funding ourselves for just the very key tasks, would that make sense? And if so, how might we go about it?
I know in Old Saybrook there's no water testing, so if you wanted to test your well,
Yeah.
you could take it there. I don't know if they do this kind of testing that we're looking for, but it might be worth asking the question, and then we could just do our samples and just make sure we have money in the budget, even if we have to reallocate something to cover that.
Yes, that's why I just want to be proactive and ask him in a way that doesn't discount all the wonderful things he does. But if he's unable, and if we can't just on that whole thing to another entity, even if they existed, what might we focus on, who might be able to do that? Especially if we want to get more detailed tributaries.
Didn't you also say that you should test the tributaries after heavy rain?
Yes.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, so not just those months, but also after heavy rain.
Yes. Well, I think he'd actually like you to test it twice. So in mid-March and early April, test it normally, and then in that same period, I think, test it after heavy rain, is how I read it. Within each time frame, we recommend 1 to 2 samples within 24 hours of a heavy rainfall, and then 1 or 2 without any rainfall.
Yeah, I didn't appreciate before talking to him is the difference between the filtered samples and not. So the filtered are particulate, which could be from erosion. So he can pinpoint whether it's, for example, leaching from a septic field that's not well maintained, or whether it's run on from erosion. And either way, the pond between samples 4 and 5, so up there, like the Jewett property, that might be helping to filter. These are all things to get into more detail and study. You know, over the next year while he's physically available, not really too much to do.
I'm sure that property is doing some filtering, absolutely, because of the soil.
It's actually a settling pond.
Yeah.
If memory serves, I mean, just as a point of reference, Dennis, you can probably correct me. We used to have WCA do the water testing, or somebody, and it cost like $20,000.
Right.
And they did it like twice a year. We've got, Yale was doing the testing to themselves every 2 weeks during the summer, and collecting all the data, and they ended up, we agreed on $8,000. So it's a huge difference.
Big difference.
And the reason, luckily for us, they've been on the lakes for so long. That's why we have a history of all of that.
Yeah. But if there is I'll call it auxiliary testing that we could continue within budget, if we start that now, so we have overlap, but for his ultra high quality testing, we could sort of validate.
Yeah.
I'm sort of thinking out loud of stuff we should get together while we can, which really means plan over the next. Yeah.
So should we recommend to him that he see if he can get any the $41.4 billion of endowment money he has?
We'll let you. Yeah.
I can ask him that. It does say for research. Universities, operations, research, and scholarships. $41.4 billion.
Oh, go ahead, you ask.
All right, I will. Invite me to the coffee.
For sure. Well, I will call him and thank him for attending, and mention that he suggested that we get together, that you would talk with him about getting together and see if he has some dates that would work for him.
Yeah, he specifically said reach out, so if you could.
Yeah,
see our
I will do that.
Perfect.
And then whoever, we'll set up a couple of dates and see what works. Great. And who can make it. The invasive plant workshop, I did not get very far on that, or the rapid response. What I did do, Joel, I went through the seminar that you attended. Yeah. And I took screenshots from.
Same here.
Yeah, you did say that. Well, it's a lot easier than trying to take a bunch of notes. I mean, I think what, and I can send you the link if you guys want to go through Ken Wagner's the gentleman's name. He's somewhat opinionated, but he's fairly solid in what what he was doing. I mean, it's broadly, it's an interesting concept. It basically says before, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you should plan ahead of time for what invasive species could potentially come to you. And then if they're found, what are you going to do about it? Who gets notified? What's the process? What's the chain of command?
So this is a talk put out by a seminar series from Western Connecticut State University. And there were several of these throughout last year, and they were evening Zoom type seminars. This was one of those. And the link is there. I can get to your Mark Camp. This is number 3. You can probably kind of zoom forward to his talk on there. But what struck me is there's this period between an invasive is observed but not taken home, and then once it's taken home, and it's really hard to get rid of once it's taken home. And he makes a somewhat dramatic, but I don't think unrealistic case of if one of these takes home, I mean, all the property values could go down by a factor 2 if all of a sudden Rogers Lake is peace out there. I mean, it's a little dramatic, but I don't think it's beyond the consideration. So you want to have a plan in place that if something is seen, this is what you do. You don't just start planning then, you don't start applying for permits, you don't start this and that. You can just tackle it right away. That's what he recommends. And I think we can do that. The fact that we have people who do surveys and we're set up to treat the lake, which we do once a year. So we're ahead of all of that. We just want to have a plan.
Don't you think one of our challenges is we have a public boat launch?
Yeah.
And DEEP doesn't allow us to put someone there. It doesn't give us authority. So a boat could come in that's not clean and go and contaminate our lake.
Yep.
And then, okay, DEEP, we have this problem. They might not do anything about it.
Well, so within those constraints, what can we do? And a big one is education. So presumably we could put up posters that says, if you have this on your boat, don't go in the lake, or better ideas than that.
They'll even stop and read the right direction, like they will read the posters.
Well,
We're really
Some
not
people
allowed
will,
to
yeah.
put things
Most don't.
there either.
I think though, if we went at a systematic approach to this, and it's, one of the things that he talks about is that is observation, right? You've got to find, you have people looking more often than once a year like we do for potential invasives. And where the invasives are going to potentially come in, if that's correct, they're coming in from the boat launch, they'll initially be in that part of the lake.
Yeah.
And, I think, if we should, if we followed that train of thought, then if we were looking there and did find things, we would have grounds to go to DEEP and say, look, we're getting invasives in because of these boats. We want to be able to put people here. What do we need to do to be able to do that? I mean, there are inspectors at other entry points, and we could then prove our case. But I think I don't have the bandwidth to drive this at the moment, because I've got, I'm dealing with the DEEP on the violation and other stuff in general. So we need a subgroup of you guys to take this on and work it through of how we would go about, if we're going to do this, how we would do it, how we would look at it.
I'm happy to be on there, ideally with others.
I would think, if a few of you could, get together and just sort of to me, a whiteboard exercise. You sit down and, I'm happy to help out. I just can't, I can't drive it at the moment.
What concerns me is the Connecticut River is full of hydrilla.
Mm-hmm.
If Rogers Lake gets full of that, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It's going to happen. It's going to come in.
Yeah.
It will. It's just a matter of when.
It's just a matter of when, and hopefully, that doesn't mean it's going to take off. And the seminar makes the point of coming in versus taking off is a two-stage process.
So say in the middle of summer, someone pulls this up and says, what's this? Oh, that's hydrilla. What do we do? You don't wait till the next meeting. I mean, that's
Right,
part of.
no, that's the whole idea of this, is that we can, yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, because I think it's important, I think it makes a lot of sense. Because it's a way to be proactive so that stuff doesn't happen again, and then, I mean, the gentleman in his talk makes the case where they found, in Massachusetts, they found zebra mussels in one of the lakes that are an invasive. I thought it was zebra mussels. They actually had an action plan in place to do something about it, but the Massachusetts version of DEEP sat on their hands for 18 months, and nothing happened. When if they'd acted right away, they could have done something about the mussels and stopped them from being a huge problem.
I have a question. So the, people who will be operating the boat, could they check the, boat, the inlet into the
Yeah,
lake?
yeah, we should train our guys.
Every day they're there, if we could train
That's a
them?
very good idea.
Because if not them, then that would mean that a subgroup of us would have to go out once a month or something and check and look for hydrilla or, other new invasives.
Yeah,
And then they just tell us if they see something, take pictures and tell us.
And I don't think we need to know the whole book. This is a great book, but there are 2 or 3 to really worry about.
yeah.
And we're aware of those, and I don't know if, Boy Scouts would like to help with this sort of thing, or.
Or the citizens, like the residents, they go off their docks and, someone brought that clam to us, that Asian clam.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm concerned about this, what is this? So we started looking into it, and I know I had some benign weed coming off of my dock, and I think that's how, if we can spread awareness that way as well, if you see something, say something.
Yeah.
And tell us, or bring it to, someone on the RLA,
Can you do that right up this year?
yeah, I can put that in the write-up. Yeah.
I mentioned last time that, but I haven't had a chance to follow through. We can get the people that put on that seminar we went to probably come here. I don't know the full, I know how to contact them, but I haven't gone through about how many people you need and how much we've done. That would be something to do.
Invasive? Have
Well, no, what they do is they come with invasive plans. They teach you how to identify plants.
Oh, that's cool.
They have actual, Joel and I went to a class where, they talk to you about them and how to identify them, and then at the end of the class, you go through and you pick them up. Yeah, it's a hands-on, it's a hands-on test. Can you identify these? And it's, if we could get people to come and do that, that'd be perfect.
Yeah.
But again, I didn't get a chance to follow through on getting that set up.
So, we don't need to do it right away, but we could add a page to the annual newsletter that has color pictures
Yeah,
of
That's a
what
great idea.
what
I like that
sandboard
a
and milfoil and all these
Yeah.
things look like. So we can pick the ones that we want to highlight and, maybe someone, keep it on your refrigerator. But,
Yeah, if you see this.
if you see this is what it is and it's bad.
Yeah,
A member of the RLA immediately.
yeah, that's a great idea.
I like that.
Because we can, and we have the money, but we can add to the size of the newsletter.
That's a great idea. That'd be a great ad.
Sorry, is that separate from what we all get once a year, that is a picture?
Same thing.
That is the same, yeah,
I can just make it bigger.
right.
Instead of,
Multi-page.
open it up like this,
Right.
we can have a third page, so it goes like this and this.
Yeah, Yeah, if that's the 2 or 3 words, if you see this, call this number.
Yeah.
Having those guys out there in the education, that's within our control, I think
Yeah.
would be valuable.
Right,
Yeah, that'd be huge.
right,
That's great, but also the people on the boat too, if they do
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. Okay. Discussion of the geese problem. I did notice that Parks and Rec, has requested in there for this year, actually, $5,000 to hire USDA to do goose addling this spring. So I can contact Sarah Von Bilt to see if they want us to help with that. I do remember, sort of a caveat, a year ago when we talked about, we had a meeting down at Haynes Park about geese and all of that. And this is when they were originally thinking about doing some culling, thank you. I was trying to think of a good term. Removing the geese. You know, they were saying, well, for them to go out and do the, you know, to do addling eggs, they'd have to get permits from the landowners to go on the various islands and have them all and all of that. So, I don't know. We should talk it over. Part of me just would say, well, if she wants to go out and do this, if they want to go out and do that and hire USDA, let them. And
but they'll never get the permitting in time.
No.
Why does it have to be a permit? Why can't it be a letter from the owner of the land that says,
They
yes,
have trouble
you
getting
have
in touch
the
with some of these
ability?
people, that's the problem.
Really?
Yeah, they've had, some of these people, they have a hard time getting in touch with.
Oh, wow.
And like you say, so much time goes by, it's too late.
Well, I know the guy who owns Blueberry and Big Dick.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
well, I guess part of me is thinking to let them do their thing, and we'll do our official thing as usual.
Yeah, but we're on the list, so it's
I'll
not-
charge you a tank of gas, I'll go out and do them all, I'll get rid of the eggs.
You know Rob will help you.
No, no,
No, that's,
and no more having them, I'll get rid of them.
all right.
That's
That's not
what-
part of
Works
it.
better.
No, no.
thank you.
No,
You said,
no.
they said it was legal now.
Recording.
They said it was legal, you could take the eggs.
It is.
And over the times I've done it, that seems to be the best choice.
So, as an individual. Because it's not, we're not saying, you know, we haven't gone through the proper channels to get permits to go on the property. So,
Half of me can reach from the water.
okay. Okay, moving forward. In terms of events on the lake, Lime Line High School has applied for rowing regattas on April 9th, 16th, 23rd, 30th, 5th, May 7th, and May 14th. They
Wow,
run
get
from 2
busy.
to 6. Well,
That's great.
I think they've gone, some of these are just, they ask for the slot, it may not necessarily happen, but
Okay.
I'd like us to agree for all of those. I'll just respond to Deep saying it's fine.
They have to do them early, because I remember one year, somebody applied, and you have to do it 45 days in advance. They did it like 46, they wouldn't give them the permit. So it has to be done well in advance.
All right, so who tells them yes?
I do.
Okay.
Actually, I just respond to Deep and say it's fine.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Yeah. They send a letter
Yes.
that went to Dennis. And, so hopefully I took care of that, but we'll see. Okay. Patrol boat job description. First of all, I have heard back from, both Sonny and John. They're willing to return this year for sure. I've got confirmation. Sonny has a friend that's a retired state trooper that may be interested in working as well.
Cool.
So we're really looking for a third person. And then Dick, I'm assuming that you
Yeah, I'll be
and
available.
Peter can,
I'm sure
sit back
Peter
and
would,
still
Peter
be,
would too, yeah.
yeah, as backup. But, we want sort of three main people. In terms of the job description, the only things that I noticed was we had down at the bottom of it, maintain the patrol boat in a clean and organized manner. And we actually have them, they all fuel, they buy the fuel and fuel the boat, so I would add that to that.
Yes.
And the next thing,
Sonny did that the year before, my God.
yeah,
Sonny keeps it.
cleans the clean, he's a good find. The next bullet point was maintain a log of activities per the director of safety supervisor. Since we don't have a safety supervisor, I suggest we strike that part.
So I made a comment about the safety supervisor as well, and do we put for the direction of RLA in absence of a safety supervisor? Or RLA representative?
Sure.
Do we want to know what?
Oh, we do, yeah.
So if, Dick, are you gonna train these folks again? They already know what to do, but, yeah, so then in this case, you would be that RLA representative, reminding them to, log the activities and share it.
That was nice for last year, they kind of took care of it themselves, the schedule and everything else, that worked out great.
Yeah, no, they're a good team.
Do they have a chance to meet periodically to share best practices?
They come to the meeting sometimes.
Yeah, we never, I don't think we formally did that last summer. They talked a lot themselves, and we had sort of a group chat going. But I think that would probably be a good idea. The summer before that, we got them together, like just for a discussion.
Right, I like the way the one fellow said, he stood up and held up his phone, and that made whoever stop doing whatever was a problem.
Yeah,
It's just sharing best practices,
yeah.
if they have an opportunity to do that.
Well, we should probably, when we put the boat in, we should probably get everybody together and go through that. All right.
Before we go to, review of the draft revision of the demo, did you want, I've called the invasive plant training group. Do you want to give me a number or a name of the, and call and see if they'd come and do a
Sure.
training session, how
Yeah.
much it would be or whatever?
Yep, I will get you that.
Okay.
Didn't the state used to come and do that? Years ago, I think.
Yeah, but this one sounds really good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I will send you that, I will send you that contact.
Right. And we just had a function in February that we had moved here, so we want to do May, June,
Yeah, I would think May, June, so that
May or
we
June.
get people, when summer people come back, because you'd like to get as many people in.
Sure,
So I think maybe shoot for June,
June,
yeah.
okay, June. June, that'd be nice.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on patrol boat? Okay, in terms of the summary of changes, I have extra copies here if anybody needs it. You need,
So, Mark, I read through this. How do you wanna just get people's comments, or how do you wanna do that?
yeah, I think I'd like to just, maybe I'll just start and, with an overview, sort of why we're doing this. And, hit the major points and then, yeah, talk about it. I think, we changed the definition of the purpose to include, not only minimization of flooding, but to support the alewives population. We, separated sort of the operating procedure or thought process, to migration and non-migrating times, because it has to do with how much we can open up the sluice gate. It sets a minimal level of the lake of 2.2, so this is the spillway, the level of the spillway is 2.1. So this gives us, a tenth of a foot, which is a little over an inch plus, of water constantly flowing. And I mean, that's what David mentioned in his talk, that it's important to keep water flowing over the dam so that, fish can migrate out.
About the spillway. I mean, the fish ladder, how about that? Isn't that open to you? Usually also.
That's open all summer as well, but some of the fish like to go over the spillway. I got a double one.
3 and 4.
Three and four, sorry about that.
No problem.
Cut and paste problem. So it calls for opening of the sluice gate when the current lake level and the forecasted rainfall together is greater than 2.5. So if the lake was at 2.2 and we're forecasted for, 4/10 of a foot of rain, you would open it. But the caveat to that is that we always give deep 24-hour notice before we open it. The reason for that is that the biggest concern that Deep has, and that's actually what has led to the fish kills before, is where we have we've opened the sluice gate in anticipation of rain, and the rain doesn't happen. So the lake drops below the level of the spillway, and the fish drop. There's not enough water in the water flow, and the fish either get caught trying to go up or trying to come out. So, and I went through the data that Dennis generated from 2024, and I don't have that up here, but there's the number of times that there was a significant number of times where the forecasted rain versus the rain that actually happened was very often we don't get anywhere near the amount of rain that is forecasted. And I can send you the spreadsheet. You can take a look at the frequencies. But it was fairly striking. I also don't think that I know that is, this is a negotiation, and for us to get approval from fisheries, we've got to show them that we're not going to harm fish. So, I mean, that puts us at risk for the few times that, it ends up raining significantly more than we anticipated, and we, didn't pre-lower the lake. That's the trade-off here.
nice is you have a very clear, well thought out operating procedure. And if something does happen, because it didn't rain or something like that, you can at least say, well, this was our well thought out procedure, and this is how we did it, and how we tried. It won't be perfect every time, but it can be.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, we're also going to observe much more frequently than what.
Right.
And I've talked with Dick, and I've asked, Dennis is going to spearhead. We're going to go to, assuming people agree with us, we're going to go to fisheries with us, by the end of the month or shortly thereafter. I would think this would then be in place for this season, as sort of a trial until we get our diversion permit. So we would operate under these parameters during that time until we get the final permit. This would be with the okay of DEEP that we'd be operating this way.
As far as showing us being proactive and goodwill and that we are doing things, would it be good to have in the appendix where we also show, this is before we did the fixing the dam, this is how it's better than the fish, if they go through here, they won't splatter in the rock.
Oh, that, I think we have told, one of the requirements of the notice of violation is that we do make that modification.
Right.
I understand your point, but I think, and we can bring it up, but it's not really part of the operations going forward, because it's really how we're going to operate it going forward, given the physical plan as it is now.
Right.
I mean, it's in our, it's good that we did that, but I don't know if it needs to be part of this document. One other thing I did forget to mention is that in my conversation with Brian, he has from the beginning thought that it would be great if all of this could be automated. Yeah. That you put a mechanical device on the gate with a little computer and a monitor for the level of the lake, program it in.
Ask them to pay for them, so you get it.
Well, actually, I found a guy that makes it.
Solar.
It can be, actually, I found a guy that does this. And it's solar powered and it's web-based, so you can go in and check it and all of those good things.
Wow.
He's supposed to have provided me a quote. I haven't gotten one yet. He was ballparking it at like $12,000.
But it still needs to be based on an algorithm that says that this is the level and this is the forecast, this is what you do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And whether that's the computer does it or someone turns.
No, I agree, but I agree. It'd be this, basically would be this put into an algorithm for the computer.
Yep.
Actually, what I really like is the computer's going to call Kevin. I just want you to know that that is out there in the mindset of the people we're working with.
That'd be nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, getting it done.
That's way down the road.
That's way down the road. He gave us 5 years to figure that out. So.
Say, ask the state to pay for it, we'll never get it.
Yeah.
By the way, and the third bullet point from the bottom on page 1 of 12, didn't the professor just say that the airline commercial lake response starting in, didn't he say late February, early March?
No.
It says mid-March here. What did he say? Mid-March?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I could have sworn he said late February, early March.
That might have been which y'all are, there was the two, there was one that was earlier than the other.
Yeah, good, that's coming to
So-
the lake, that's
So
the
the
end.
fourth bullet from the bottom on page one,
Yep,
the ecology and evolutionary biology, Yale University, just change the font color. It's
lighter.
lighter.
Oh,
Was that because it's a link? Is it a link one?
it's a link.
Yeah, that's why.
Oh, I see. At the bottom, in the footer, change the revised draft date.
Ah,
So
okay, whatever it is, yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I guess from now, I'll just take any comments or questions or thoughts.
So I thought, and I could be wrong, the keys, so on page 3, the second bullet, the padlock key is held by the town of Old Lyme and the RLA. I thought somewhere in the class we had who held the key. I know you asked.
I don't think we ever said who had it.
We purposely didn't want to
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
yeah,
say that.
Right,
I think being general is better. Plus, it could the people could change.
right.
Okay, all right, so there was that,
We tried to be vague there.
okay.
I agree.
And then, there's a 24-hour notice. All I saw was 24-hour notice. I didn't see where we had to wait for their approval or is it given, we're just providing notice.
At this point, I wanted to, just make it notice,
Yeah, we don't want to be waiting.
you know.
No, we don't.
No, that's,
Right.
so,
and-
Okay, so we're just providing notice and then we're proceeding according to the notice they provided.
that's what we're going with, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then, what happens if it's a weekend or a holiday?
Too bad, they got the 24-hour notice.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
we're noticing.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
What if you call them up at 12 o'clock at night, tell them I'm gonna open it now?
Well, no, that's not 24-hour notice.
Yeah.
It's 24 hours long open.
Oh, okay, if that's the case. Right. That's all I have on this.
I thought this was wonderfully written. There was one sentence that wasn't too clear to me, and maybe it was clear to others, but on page 6 of 14, the top indented paragraph, it says, if the sluice gate is open, it should be at least 10 inches on the gauge to achieve enough turbulence to discharge passage of A lines through the sluice way. And just whoever wrote that, if they could just think if that's clear.
Sorry, where are you?
Wait, and where are you? 6 of 12?
Yeah, 6 of 12.
Okay.
It's the,
What, not 1?
yeah.
Bullets below 1?
Yeah. But it's above the bullet 2 that says from mid-June through October. So above the,
I'm not seeing it.
yeah, I'm looking at, maybe it came through differently on my.
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
So this, under D, operation mid-March through October.
Okay, that's page 4 of 12. No problem.
And then there's, on 1, it says in the spring,
Yep.
and there's the indented paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
Toward the bottom of the sentence starts, if the sluice gate is open.
It should be at least 10 inches on the gauge.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess I was confused which gauge and turbulence where, and so.
They don't want the fish coming up through the tube. That's why you want to have some turbulence, because the fish will shoot up there and then they don't get a count.
You don't know where that gauge is. That's
Right.
The gauge is on the,
the wheel.
the
And that was the other
gauge.
thing that wasn't clear to me, that there's inches on the wheel, and, but never having done it myself, that was less clear, so.
No, but that's a good point.
The wheel gauge? No, gauge.
It's the sluice gate
gauge.
It's intense also.
If later on you say 3.5 inches on the sluice gate wheel, and again, I didn't really, I sort of knew what that meant, but
No, thanks,
a
that's
little
good.
clarification might help
Okay.
there. Otherwise, I thought this is so true.
And I think it is intense.
It's intense, yeah, same thing.
So,
You know, I went back and looked at that. I don't know. I thought it was intense too, because I was going to correct you, and then it wasn't. Oh, I don't have it.
Intense.
okay, we'll take a look at it.
We'll take a look, 'cause I thought I looked it up once before, and it wasn't. It was in inches. Because I counted the, well, we'll take a look. That's fine.
Now, if Yale ends up not coming back to the lake in 2026, does that mean any place where they're mentioned in here, this will have to be redone? I mean,
Yeah,
once somebody notices, wouldn't say we go and just do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
Yeah,
in
then we would
the,
just do deep.
in the appendix where all the phone numbers are, all that will have to be
full out.
eradicated.
Oh, I hope they get money.
They have a lot in there.
Yeah, but you know how many people in Yale, I mean, everybody that does research at Yale has just had everything cut.
I swear I will ask him if I'm invited for coffee. I'll slide that in there. I'll slide it right on in there.
Well, it's not against him.
No,
Exactly.
It's just saying you're actually supporting him.
Yes, I'm
Why
giving
can't you get
ideas.
money from, I'm sure he thought of it.
I'm sure too, but.
yeah, I think everybody's lining up. Anything else?
Yeah.
You're gonna, want the shoemaker cell, you're gonna get that, take that out.
Right. They'll either get together or take it out.
Well, it really needs to be in there.
Yeah, I'll get her.
Okay.
And, appendix 4, you've got 2 nice graphs, but just the horizontal axis, you have the, where's the blank level?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Maybe in parentheses after the caption.
Right.
Just for clarity.
Nope, thank you.
And then $27.
So on both of them, it should be.
Should be feet, yeah.
Both of them, okay.
24 feet. 24 feet.
Oh,
Yeah.
top of page 5,
The page 5.
number 6,
Well,
second line, add a space between the and 24.
Oh, thanks. Did you catch that or did Joan catch that?
You don't want to have to look at this.
Well, and actually, there should be a comma after period.
Well,
Okay. I'll take on,
We gotta get that picky.
go for it.
all right.
It's really, very good,
Well, this is all
very good.
Dennis's work. I just edited. So thank you, Dennis. I appreciate it.
I'll discuss it with them in the email.
So if there aren't any comments, this is what, I'll clean this up and this is what we'll run by and take the first pass to fisheries with.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Is there any other business we need to attend to? Any other comments?
I don't think so.
Okay, if not, I would request,
I make a motion to adjourn.
can I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much.